Good evening and welcome to Money Matters. My name is Charlie Huntington and I'm the Public Relations Chairperson for Pennsylvania Bio. Pennsylvania Bio is the voice of advancement for Pennsylvania's bioscience industry. Its mission is to ensure Pennsylvania is the global leader in the biosciences by creating a cohesive community that unites our biotech, medical device, diagnostic, pharmaceutical, research, and financial strengths together. I want to remind our viewers that from time to time, financial issues relating to life sciences or healthcare matters or companies may be discussed on the show. These discussions are not and should be not viewed as financial advice. Moreover, since this program is pre-recorded and shown at a later date, please keep in mind that the information may be dated. You should always check with your financial advisor before entering into any financial transaction. I'm very pleased to have with me as my co-host tonight, Kimon Hatza. Kimon is a business attorney and partner at Millcrest Law in Radnor, Pennsylvania. His focus is in the life sciences, healthcare, and information technology areas. Welcome, Kimon.
Charlie, thanks. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for hosting with me. So, there was a recent article in the Philadelphia Inquirer by Daniel Hoffman which referenced the two horsemen of the pharma apocalypse. Mm-hmm. I take it you saw the article.
I've seen it, yes.
Okay. Can you share very briefly with our viewers sort of what the crux of the article is? And
sure. Yeah, it's a pretty hard-hitting article. It doesn't really pull any punches in this article, and he takes a look at the pharmaceutical industry, particularly big pharma, over the past decade. Mm-hmm. And some of the decisions that were made, strategic decisions that were made, presumably at the time to improve or help the businesses for the large pharmaceutical companies. And he believes that over that period, it's become clear that those decisions were unwise. He lays a lot of the blame at the feet of finance departments and CFOs of these big companies, as well as outside advisors to the pharmaceutical industry. And he looks at a couple of different issues. One of the ones that I wanted to mention was because it's something that has come up on our show a number of times, is that I guess in an effort to cut cost, many of the companies have either frozen or reduced or gotten rid of their R&D, research and development groups. Mm-hmm. And that has resulted, of course, it's something that we feel here in this region because of the significance of the pharmaceutical industry, but that has resulted in thousands of people being laid off from positions. Long time, PhD scientists and researchers, people who, been with companies and probably thought that they would be with those companies until they retired and lost their positions. And he said that he feels that was a big mistake on their part. To the extent that they've maintained those departments, a lot of the people that have stepped in for those folks are people that are much more junior, don't have nearly the skill set, or
may not have the historical background.
Exactly.
Right.
The institutional memory, for a lot of those companies, when you let go of that many people that have been there for that long, can really be affected adversely. So he doesn't have a lot really positive to say about it, and his view is that he thinks the die is sort of cast, and to some extent he feels like these decisions have put some of these companies into what he calls a death spiral. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, and maybe we're still coming out of a recession. Perhaps some of those decisions will over time correct themselves, although he doesn't have a lot of confidence that that's going to be the case. The good news is we have a guest this evening who has come out of academia, gone to big pharma, and is now with smaller life sciences companies, who has lived through all of this and may be able to bring some more information to bear on the article.
It's going to be a great show.
Yes,
Thank you, Kimon.
Sure.
Before we turn to our guest, I would like to remind our viewers that this is how they can send their questions that they would like addressed on upcoming episodes of Money Matters.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says Send Us Your Questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
Tonight's special guest is Diane Jorkasky. Diane is Chief Medical Officer, EVP, Head of Development at Complexa, Inc. Her past experience includes the following positions: Chief Medical Officer of Endo Pharmaceuticals, Senior Vice President of Clinical Development at Tengion, Head of Development and Senior Vice President of Aileron Therapeutics, Vice President Development, Head of Worldwide Clinical Research Operations of Pfizer. Presently, she's on the boards of Tengion, Q Therapeutics, and Biomotive, LLC. She's an adjunct professor at the University of California, San Francisco. She's published over 100 peer-reviewed articles and was selected to be a Woodrow Wilson Visiting Fellow. Dr. Jorkasky received her BA degree in chemistry at the College of Worcester. She earned her MD from Penn and conducted her residency in internal medicine at the University of Pennsylvania Hospital and her nephrology fellowship at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania. In her free time, she loves to tend to her flower garden and tolerates her husband's love for constant music. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you very much, Charlie.
Can you tell us about Complexa Incorporated, please?
Yeah, Complexa is a biotechnology. It's a company located right here in Radnor, Pennsylvania, so not very far away. Mm-hmm. It actually grew out of some initial seed money at Pittsburgh, and the scientific founders are from the University of Pittsburgh and the Department of Pharmacology. It is a company that is dealing with nitrofatty acid technology. This is new signaling pathway technology, with the purpose of which is to inhibit inflammation, to create a reparative processes to the body once inflammation occurs, and to reduce fibrosis. This technology is really kind of interesting because it grew out of nitric oxide biology, which was a Nobel Prize-winning technology that came out of the labs a number of years ago. And in the process of looking at how nitric oxide worked as a signaling agent in the body, they started to try to give more and more and more of it to animals to see whether or not they could create toxicity. And they developed these little molecules, put them on the shelf for 10 years, didn't pay attention to them, and then brought them out again and started looking at them and started to recognize that this was a major pathway in the body by which every one of us tries to reduce the inflammatory processes that occur in our bodies due to whatever events may cause that inflammation in the first place. So we're very excited. We're in the clinic now with oral and IV formulations. We have considerable data, and we are heading towards the start of a phase 2A later this year, and so we're very excited. And as always, raising money in biotech.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, very, very exciting.
Diane, I know you were funded in part by one of the life science greenhouses in Pittsburgh.
Actually,
That's
two
right.
of them.
Yeah,
Two of
two of
them.
them.
Oh,
yeah.
two of them,
Yeah,
okay.
PSLG and Innovation Works.
Okay,
right.
great. And you also, as you mentioned, maintain a presence here in Radnor at BioAdvance's
That's correct,
offices.
right.
Can you tell our viewers a little bit about how these companies have positively affected
Right.
Complexa?
Well, Pittsburgh is an interesting town to start a biotechnology company with emphasis upon drugs, because traditionally they've been more of a technology device company area. So this was a little bit of a novel departure, but it was homegrown technology right there at the University University of Pittsburgh. So for them, it was a natural. The CEO, Josh Tarnoff, with whom I work, actually started with the PSLG and the Innovation Works, took it over. I was not there with him, but he traveled almost every week to and fro Pittsburgh, and they provided tremendous support in terms of office space, sort of everything you need to get started when you have absolutely nothing. Maybe I think they had $28,000 in the bank at that point in time. They provided introductions to the appropriate communities that could help the company get started. I think there's a lot of emotional support at that time because it's very frustrating being on it's exciting, but at the same time it can be very frustrating starting a new company and having doors slammed in your face until you get data and traction. And I think they provided tremendous advice. And that's now we moved most of our operations here to Philadelphia at Radnor, and Biovance is again a great environment in which for us to proceed with our work. And Barbara Schilberg and that team has been excellent in terms of being there and talking with us as needed and so forth. But now we're far more sustained, far more of an adult organization.
That's great.
Many of our guests have said, staying on the financing piece for a second, many of our guests have, I think a continuous theme on a lot of our shows, particularly for early stage companies, is where's the next round of financing coming from? I mean, because with these kinds of companies, you've got such a long period of time from your idea until you have a commercialized product. And for whatever reason, companies are not as willing these days to investors to jump in at such an early stage anymore. They at least like to see some progress and see that some light at the end of the tunnel before they put some money in. But you guys have been very successful doing this, at least up to this point. Can you share with our viewers, what your secret to success is?
Well, talk to me again in December when we raise our Series C. And we're willing to do crowdsourcing. No, I'm just teasing. But I think this business is for the long haul. This is not a short-term business. You've got to have a long-term view in mind when you go into biotech, and you have to be incredibly resilient. Because my husband, who used to be in sales, used to say you should be used to getting rejected. If you can do that, then you're good in sales. And I would say that's true also in biotech. You have to be used to getting rejected and getting back up again. I think, first of all, we have a very seasoned gang of people, if you will, medical, developmental old farts who know how to get this done, who've been through the trenches and know how to move things ahead. I think the other reasons that we've been fairly successful is a real belief in the scientific underpinnings of our technology. That is important. If you're there just as a mouthpiece, people recognize that you don't have an authentic belief in your compound. That means you have to have really credible data. That means consistent data, reproducible data, that it all hangs together. Not one-hit wonders, but a consistency across all the way in which the drug works, particularly as you progress forward, showing that it works in a disease process. I think you have to be really clear in your communication. I'm not sure we were really good at initial, because when you have a new technology, you have to explain to people how that technology works, and sometimes that takes a little bit longer than you anticipated. I think we've got the hang of it now, and that's really important. And I think always having clinical data kind of trumps everything else. So I think that's necessary. And I think there has to be a balanced view of technology. Nothing is 100% perfect. Nothing is 100% bad. It's always about risk-benefit. And so being able to speak to that and also demonstrate not only can you show where the drug works, but how you're resolving any liabilities, I think is critical as well. So you just have to continuously plow ahead and generate the data and anticipate the groups that you're going to be working with as to what's going to interest them and where their flashpoints are that you can smooth out by the information that you can give them. So, but like I said, let's wait till December and I'll be able to tell you then how we're doing.
I want to just go back to one of the points that you raised. I mean, one of the things that we hear all the time, whether it's from investors or from companies, is your team is really important.
Yes.
The team that you put together. Lots of times when you have something that might come out of a university, and I know some universities treat that differently, but are the academicians still involved? Are they the CEO of the company, or have they been smart enough to put together a team of experienced people that know how to do that? Because lots of times people coming out of academia they're wonderful on the science, obviously, but they aren't necessarily good business people in terms of running with a new company and actually taking it to where it has to go. How did you go about putting together the management team that you have there?
Well, in all fairness, Josh Tarnoff, who was our CEO, did that, and I think he was looking for a certain type of person. I happened to come along at a good time when we just clicked, and I think really key to this are the board of directors. The board of directors was one of the members of the board, Peter Grebo, who's locally was at Cephalon, actually was introduced me to Josh and made the recommendation, and that's how that came about. Josh selected the board of directors, and so they have been exceptional in terms of working with us. And I think that's important. Being in a company where the board of directors is dysfunctional is going to create all kinds of problems for the management as well as and look, no one in this business can predict where you're going to be in terms of problems with the drug, good things with the drug. If you move too fast, you spend your money too fast. You have to have a board that's going to work with you and help you and also introduce investors and so forth, because you're trying to keep costs down, which means you keep personnel down, but at the same time, you're expected to do a heck of a lot. And I've been very happy with the board, are really happy. Our scientific founder, Bruce Freeman at the University of Pittsburgh, has been excellent in terms of working with us. Many times you find in these little companies that there's a friction between the scientific founder and the company, and what happens, they dissociate and there's no longer that relationship. And we've been able to work together very, very well. I think he brings the fundamental basic science. I understand that, but my expertise is in the developmental science, and then Josh is there to make the money. So together, I think we can communicate very well what this technology is all about.
Diane, you experienced biotech in a few different hubs around our country. I know recently you returned from the JP Morgan conference out in San Francisco. You used to live in Boston. How do San Diego and the cities that I just mentioned, San Francisco and Boston, can you sort of compare and contrast them? If you're a life science entrepreneur, what you'll experience in each of those cities, please?
Right. Well, I can't address specifically the San Diego, San Francisco area intimately, but having been up in Boston, in the Cambridge area, and then down here in Philadelphia, what I do notice is that there's a fundamental different environment. There is a lot more hype, there's a lot more involvement into this concept of biotechnology. There's a buzz, and being an entrepreneur in that environment is considered really something that everybody should, aspire to. So it's almost nurtured and fed. And what I found is coming down to Philadelphia, there's a bit of a feeling towards from these other cities towards areas like Philadelphia, New Jersey, that this is kind of old pharma, that the novel stuff is going on in these centers where these institutions are, which is a shame because we have Penn here and Jefferson and the other schools, and yet it doesn't have the same kind of panache, if you will, regarding biotechnology and the innovation that's created. I think there's a lot of sizzle and not enough steak always, but nonetheless, there's a lot of sizzle, and that does create this environment of energy and excitement. I think the other aspect that I believe is missing in Philadelphia is that while there's tremendous opportunities early on to get a company started, BioAdvance, the Benjamin Franklin support and so forth, these seed monies, there's no follow-on money. And we're going through the financing now, but I can't tell you that if you ask me now, aside from one or two venture funds locally, is who would I go to? I can't think of anybody else. Where I can give you 5 names in Boston. And I think one of the issues is that these groups in Boston, and I think Third Rock, for example, is a great example of a venture fund, that once they're involved with the company, they really help that company. They want to see it succeed. And they walk down the street, they go to visit. Not that they're being intrusive, because you don't want to do that, but to be there, to be the supportive, because everybody wants this to be a win-win. It should not be a fractionated relationship. So I think that Philadelphia is just doesn't have that yet. And I would love to see, Philadelphia has everything here. We do have tremendous experience. And a lot of folks that have gone into the sciences, into biotechnology in Boston, don't necessarily have the in-depth experience. They don't know what they don't know.
Okay.
And I think that's important. And I think that I just would love to see follow-on money in Philadelphia. I would love to say that, we are being supported here locally, and we've been big success, a pharma company coming out of the Philadelphia area that's new and novel. There are many companies here, but it's not quite the same feeling at all.
So you feel like we need VCs on the ground?
We need VCs on the ground.
More than just on the ground, we need offices here.
We need offices here. We need support here. We need people who take an interest in encouraging this environment, making it more of a hub as opposed to this diffuse network. It's got to be more than just a bio meeting once a year and so forth. And they do great work in terms of the governmental stuff, but this has got to be more around the venture capital groups and the support that's there. Brenda Gavin and the Quaker Group have always been great to work with, but I think they're unique in that regard. I would like to see that more cloned.
And it sounds like, in terms of the people, you're suggesting that we may be sitting on some of the more seasoned people who do, I forget how you put it, but either, my words would be sort of know where the landmines are.
That's right.
Or, that, so it sounds like that is, it is a piece that may be missing.
That's
but it
right.
looks like we have things that the other regions don't have.
That's exactly right. Oftentimes people look, oh my gosh, there's a wheel. Well, the wheel's been around for a long time.
Right.
And so novel things that just because you didn't know didn't mean that people didn't know about it. And unless you have one heck of a network where you can reach out and talk to senior people and ask them, you may miss some of the fundamental elements of drug development that could really hurt your project. And I think that's what that's one of the real advantages the Philadelphia area does have. A lot of talent here.
I mentioned the JP Morgan conference earlier, and I know you all are in the process where you will be raising money. Was there and I know it's an enormous 20,000 person conference, was the buzz this year different than any other year in terms of ease or difficulty in terms of finding funding? What did you see?
I think we're coming out of the doldrums of the past 5 years. I think there's more and more. There's less inertia. There's more desire to get in there, but I don't see it quite as cracking as it should be.
Okay.
So it for us it was very good. We had a lot of traffic, as we should say, but I can't say that I see it as what it used to be in terms of an organizational kind of dynamic.
Thank you.
Yep.
Diane, you made a successful move from academia to big pharma, and then later on from big pharma now to smaller life science companies. Can you talk a little bit about that journey for our viewers, and I think that what you learned in that process, and maybe either manage the expectations of people who are thinking about making a similar move, or just talk to them about the process and what you need to do to be successful?
Well, I wanted to be a doctor and to do clinical research, believe it or not, since I think about the third grade when I no longer wanted to be a nun. And and having gone to Catholic school, that was a big departure. All throughout when high school, and I said I wanted to be go into medicine. They said, you want to be a nurse? I said, no, I want to be a doctor. So I had this calling, always had this view of being a clinician educator, doing clinical research, and being in an academic setting. But to be honest with you, I got there, and after 5 years, or almost nearly 5 years on faculty, I found it boring. It didn't give me enough bandwidth. It didn't grow me as much as I thought it was going to do. I love caring for the patients, but the bread and butter of any practice are going to be certain things. And in renal, it was always the chronic renal failure patient, the dialysis patient. And it was hard because you really could not make that much of a change in their lives no matter what you try to do, even if you had the best patient in the world who followed every order that you gave them, or recommendation that you gave them. And so after 5 years, and when I started getting bored by my own lectures, I decided that it was time to move on. And I was recruited heavily, went into industry, and I was a pariah. because no one ever did that, and it was a departure from what most people did. But I never looked back, and I thought it was fantastic. I enjoyed Big Pharma, but I recognized the higher up you went into the organization, the less you could have major impact. But there were more organizational constraints. It was more about the politics and more about navigating the bureaucracy than it was necessarily about getting the job done. And that was true probably in academia as well. What I like about Little Pharma is it's here now. It's edgy. You got to have a heck of a network. You got to be ready to pick up the phone and call anybody anytime to have questions answered. You have to be able to address problems on your feet and not wait for somebody else. And you cannot hide. It's really easy in Big Pharma to hide if you don't want to take any responsibility for decision making. You cannot do that in biotech because you are the person making the decisions. So it's thrilling. It's nerve-wracking. It's being on the edge, but it's great. It's really great. And being on a board of directors then as well has allowed me to see this whole industry from every side, from all the way from being the caretaker to on the board of directors, managing, being in a company now, and hope to God, I hope I'm never become a patient. I'll take care of my husband if he gets sick, but I just want to have a nice, that's it, when I'm 90 or so.
Where do you think the opportunities may be for kids who are in their teens right now? Where do you think the opportunities may be in the future in terms of would you encourage them to go down the PhD track, the MD track, the business side of medicine track? I mean, where are the opportunities? And is someone going to give them a job? They've got to take a job, create a job, help us to manage expectations.
Well, I get asked that. In fact, I have a phone call tonight with a young man who's an undergraduate at Penn, wants to know what to do. He wants to go into medicine. I think, if somebody told me 30 years ago that I'd be doing this today, I'd tell you, you'd be smoking dope. There is no way that I'd be doing this. And I think what you have to do is you have to go where you are happy, where you are comfortable, where you like what you're doing. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine at this point retiring because I love what I'm doing. You give me a scientific problem to resolve, I will work at it. I don't care how many hours it takes until I resolve it, and I can't put it down until it's resolved. And I think, so if I were to tell somebody, I'd say follow where you need to, where it makes sense, where you feel comfortable and what makes you happy, because this is what you're going to be doing every day of your life. And don't be afraid to change if it's not making you happy. Look for other opportunities. So I can't be more concrete than that because I don't think there is any set pattern.
Well, you have a gift of taking the difficult and explaining it very succinctly and very eloquently.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I mentioned earlier, we have about a minute left. I mentioned earlier your love for gardening. Where did that come from?
I think it's my grandmother. My grandmother was a pretty nice gardener. I think it was a woman when I was growing up who had a gorgeous garden. Her son died when he was very young, got hit by a car. Mm-hmm. And I think she poured all her sorrow into that garden. It was spectacular. And to this day, I can still see that garden. And to me, it's serenity. It gives me a chance to get out there. I love dirt. I love digging in the dirt. I love working in worms. I don't care about wearing gloves. I just like being out there, and I love seeing what happens when you plant your plants and take care of them appropriately. And I talk to them.
Good for you.
And I shoo away the deer.
Well, it's been a real pleasure. We could continue to go down about 3 different tangents, I think, with you, Diane, and this has been great.
It's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate you being a part of the show. Kimon, as always, thank you. You've been a great guest host, and thank you for the conversation earlier about the Inquirer article. Before we sign off, I want to remind our viewers that our next guest will be Nick Izzy. He's from Izzy and Associates, and Nick will be covering federal income taxes and clues to how you may be able to save some money in that arena. So we'll look forward to hearing from Nick. I also want to remind you that Money Matters is now available as an audio podcast on iTunes, as well as Stitcher Radio, listed as Money Matters, the podcast for mobile devices. The video is available on our YouTube channel, as well as our website. Thank you, and as always, your money matters. Good night.